Okay, well, it seems like we have most of our pre-registered people in attending, so we're so glad you're all here. I noticed some of you have already registered and some of you are just interested in learning about this really incredible opportunity, the Microsimulation Development Lab. This is the informational webinar and Q&A session, and of course in partnership with CapsimInbox and their team, as well as our featured guests from Ashesi University and University of Geneva. School of Economics and Management. So we are so excited that you are here. My name is Maddie Handler, and I'm the one that's been corresponding with majority of you over email. And you are welcome to email me anytime after this session as well. Just a few reminders. This is a recorded session for the purposes of those who cannot be with us today, who cannot make the time and want to access this information going forward or otherwise. And you are all welcome to either introduce yourself in the chat and or ask questions in the chat or Q&A function. And on this moment, I'm going to pass it on to our lovely CEO, Dan LeClaire, who's just going to say a couple words before we get started.
All right, thank you, Maddie. Lovely CEO. I like that one. I like that one very much. And let me add my thanks to Maddie's, to all of you for being here. But let me also say a special thank you to the folks that are joining us today to do all the work, essentially. Matt and Kelsey, we value our partnership very much with Capsim, and Capsim and Dan go way back, but I can say that over the last couple of years, we've really begun to hone in on the kinds of things that we could do to make a difference together. So thank you for joining us and making that difference. But also all the folks, I won't name everyone, but everyone that's joining us to really give insight into what this means. Because I have to say, you know, one of the most common questions I get is, what is this Microsimulation Development Lab? And you'll get inside that with the help of folks today. But the question about what is this is very different than the question about why we're doing it. And I just wanted to add a couple of comments about that. We're doing this because the GBSN mission is to improve access to quality, locally relevant management education for the developing world. And the idea of being able to provide immersive experiences in context really matters to us. It matters to us greatly, and that's in many ways why we created the network in the first place. But I also want to say this is also about experiential learning for faculty. You know, we believe that contextualized learning happens when you experience things, and for faculty, part of our job is to develop faculty capacity, teaching capacity and development capacity. And so this serves both functions: to develop content that's relevant for the classroom in different parts of the world and for different parts of the world. What you're building with us, if it's focused on, let's say, Ghana, right, that's for the rest of the world to experience as much as it is for Ghanaians to experience. So you're doing this to develop the content, but you're also doing it to develop skills. And we want those skills, we want you to help us transfer them throughout this experience. So thank you again to everyone joining us. I'm gonna stop now and turn it over to Matt. Matt, by now, almost needs no introduction, but let me just say that he's the heart of what we're doing here with the Microsimulation Development Lab, and he's been a great asset to Capsim as well as to GBSN. I think his bio is posted. So Matt, it's up to you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Dan. Thank you very much, Maddie, for coordinating this event. Thank you to our 2020 authors for being on the call to kind of share your experience as well. And thank you all for participating in today's webinar, where we're going to take you through the 2021 Microsimulation Development Lab. Let me just go ahead and share my screen here. So first off, quick introduction about myself. My name, of course, is Matthew Shell. I'm Capsim's Market Development Manager, and my primary role here at Capsim is to assist both our academic as well as corporate authors with creating custom microsimulations via the very platform that you'll have a chance to use for today's competition. Now, I'll have some other introductions here in just a moment, but what I wanted to do to start was just kind of lay out a quick agenda of what we'll cover over the next 40 minutes or so. First and foremost, I wanted to kind of detail a bit about us at Capsim, for those of you that may not be familiar with us just yet. And then from there, we're going to go and take an in-depth view at the CapsimInbox microsimulation platform. This will be, of course, the tool that you'll use to create simulated email experiences. That way your students could interact and kind of see how day-to-day business operations go in a variety of different subject areas, whether it be environmental sustainability or healthcare or human rights. After that, we'll briefly share a little bit about how the science of learning is going to be embedded into any tool that you would like to create as a part of this competition in a way that we call the 4 pillars, which I'll describe, along with a couple of use cases about how you can use this in the classroom. And then from there, I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Kelsey, who's going to take you through an in-depth walkthrough of the CapsimInbox authoring platform, the web-based solution where you'll actually be able to write out the emails to create the very simulations that everybody will be designing. And then from there, in the final 15 to 20 minutes or so, I'd like to open it up to more of a open-ended discussion with 4 members of the 2020 author group that created simulations last year. So just kind of a quick rundown of the main things we'll hit on today. But of course, as Maddie mentioned, if there's any questions you have at any time, feel free to submit those in the chat and we can respond to those at the end of today's session. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, who are we at Capsim? Well, we at Capsim have been a global leader in simulation-based learning for well over 35 years at this point. In fact, it starts with our company's founding in the mid-1980s, where we are creating custom simulations for a variety of different corporations out there. And I'm happy to say that we've come a long way from the floppy disks of the past to more web-based solutions and everything. I think you'll have a lot of fun with the solution that you're going to use as a part of this competition. I myself have been with Capsim for about 5 years at this point. It's been a phenomenal company to work for, and you can see a lot of my colleagues that make what we do possible in the bottom left-hand corner. Also at this time, I'd like to introduce my main colleague that'll be assisting with this competition, our learning experience coordinator, Kelsey Zimermann. Kelsey, want to say a quick hello?
Hello, everybody. I'm excited to work with you, and I'm excited to see what you create inbox-wise. So it's nice to meet you all.
Absolutely. And again, Kelsey and I are going to be there every step of the way. If you have any questions whatsoever throughout the creation process of your simulation, we'll be right there. We'll even provide scheduling links. That way, if any point you and your team want to connect with us, you can do so. But to cap off a little bit more about Capsim, some of you may have some exposure to us on the academic front because a lot of our simulations, whether they be group-based, project-based simulations that let individuals run their own companies against each other to kind of, illustrate a closed marketplace, or if you're looking at custom solutions that are more individualized like CapsimInbox, we have a presence in everywhere from your intro to business level undergrad courses all the way through executive level trainings. Executive MBA level sessions. And at any given point in time, we're at about 1,100 universities around the globe, helping out about 3,000 professors and about 140,000 students at any one point in time. And then to kind of bring it all back home and kind of relate it to why Inbox is not just applicable in academia, but what you'll create will also have potential corporate applications, is that we do have an expansive history with corporate trainings. Again, going back to our founding. We've helped out with everything from more standard professional development programs to helping identify high potentials to teaching strategic and business acumen as well. And in fact, many of the companies you see on the right side of the screen have gone through those sort of simulation trainings. And in fact, since 2017, when we started to create more custom micro simulations with Inbox, a couple of the companies, including S&P Global, Rapunzel Investments, and Reach HR, have used the same tool that you're going to use to help out their clients, to help out both internal and with external users for everything from developing financial acumen to helping as a hiring tool, or even to help individuals be certified on different intranet systems or third-party technologies, basically. So a lot of different applications for the simulations that you'll be able to create. And very briefly, we'll do some more formal introductions a little bit later in today's presentation, but I did want to quickly give a shout out to our 2020 GBSN Faculty Simulation Lab authors that have joined us on the call today that are going to share their own personal experience. Why did they decide to join the competition? What were they looking for in terms of the need that they wanted to address their simulation? And what kind of tips and tricks can they provide to you all to be successful in this simulation as well? And we have 3 members of our Ethics and International Mining simulation team, as well as a member of our Mercury Trade Cobalt team. that we'll be spending some time with a little bit later on. So thank you all for joining there as well. But now that we've detailed a bit about Capsim simulations, now that we've kind of introduced everybody that's been on the call, I'd like to start off with the very question that Dan posed at the entrance of this session. And that is, what is a microsimulation? Now, many of you are probably very familiar with the aspects of simulations and really the benefits of experiential learning. It's practical, it's engaging, and it really gives students the chance to try out different business concepts or just general soft skill development in a controlled atmosphere. But when it comes to microsimulations specifically, as the name suggests, it really is much more of an abridged experience, much shorter. Really putting an emphasis on bite-sized learning. We're talking about experiences here that students can complete in as little as 15 to say 60 minutes on average. And what's nice about microsimulations, because they are very much shorter, it allows us to have a very specific topical focus. And in fact, many of you that are registered so far have seen what those focuses we're trying to achieve. We're looking at how business interacts with environmental sustainability, or business in a healthcare setting, or business and human rights, or even give you the potential to create something that's a brand new topic of all of your own. And by extension of that acute topical focus, it allows us to measure a very defined set of attributes, whether it be skills or competencies. Now, what would I be referring to here? Think of it like your general soft skill capabilities, like the ability to lead, to problem solve, to organize, or to effectively communicate with peers. But at the same time, we can look at technical knowledge as well. How well can you follow different processes, or how well do you know different statutes, for example? All of this can be assessed within the CapsimInbox experiences that you'll create. Now, what's also nice about this is that with whatever you create on the platform, you're going to get access to a great deal of analytics and data from the individual all the way up to the cohort and institution level, basically everybody that goes through your simulation. And in fact, we've seen applications of microsimulations across academia, in the corporate setting, and even government applications for several years now. But really the misconception out there has been that they're always difficult to create, or they're not cost effective, or how do I even get started creating a simulation? So we at Capsim are seeking to dispel that notion with GBSN's help to create some locally relevant simulations via the CapsimInbox authoring platform. Now, what exactly is CapsimInbox? Well, what CapsimInbox is a simulated day in the life experience via a simulated email format, as you can see, where what we're trying to do is put the students in the role of a fictional employee or manager at a company, and we want to see how they're going to be able to navigate the different day-to-day tasks, issues, and even crises that they may encounter within that given setting. And as you can see, we wanted to make it look much like the Outlooks and the Gmails that we use on a day-to-day basis, because since basically everybody out there uses email in some capacity, it immediately makes the simulation you're creating that much more relatable, that much more familiar. That way, learners are spending more time on the substance of your experience as opposed to how do I use this tool, basically. But to kind of quickly walk through the CapsimInbox experience, a great framing device is to think of this as like a digital choose your own adventure, where the way that students respond to the different email and instant message stimuli that you as authors will create, well, they're going to be able to see the consequences of their actions in real time, whether they're positive or negative. Think of it almost like a decision tree with different paths that they can go down. But to kind of quickly walk through the user interface, you'll see that at the very top, this is a timed experience. And for this competition, we're looking to, again, create simulations that are roughly 15 to 30 minutes long. And this would encapsulate roughly 15 to 20 emails, we would say, for you to create, but you can, of course, add more if you'd like. On the left side of the screen, you'll see that there's an inbox tab where they'll be able to respond to the different emails you've created, as well as going to their sent items folder. That way they can review anything that they've responded to previously for context. Additionally, underneath that, you'll see the drive, a company drive, just like the OneDrives and Google Drives that we use. And this will give you the opportunity to put in any sort of multimedia, whether it be Microsoft Office files, videos, or even photos that you may want students to be able to look at in order to make well-informed decisions. This can include everything from, say, an organizational chart, or say a sales promotion where maybe they have to look at it to give a quote on bulk pricing, as a quick example. And then beneath that, we do have instant messages that pop up as well that you'll be able to create. Typically, these are a little bit shorter in their length and a little bit more time sensitive. Maybe you have to respond to them a little bit quicker than other emails. To the right of that, you'll see the list of different emails that you have, along with all the different fictional characters that you will be able to create. So this will allow you to create internal stakeholders from everywhere from interns all the way to the CEO of your fictional company to external stakeholders, whether you want to have some business to business or business to consumer interactions as well, whether they be vendors or direct clients. And then to the right of that, you'll see the way that you'll actually have students respond to your emails. So you'll have your fictional character, your subject line, the email body, and then you'll have a variety of nuanced response options that you're going to be able to create for your emails. And rather than it being a binary correct or incorrect response or true or false, just like in the real world, we understand that there's a variety of ways to handle a given situation. So what you'll be able to do is create different responses that have subtle differences between them that really can make all the difference when it comes to how a story progresses. Now, in addition to multiple choice, we have a new feature this year in the form of written responses. And I can give you a quick example of how that might work. Say, for instance, you've crafted an email that's multiple choice. Student responds to that multiple choice. And then from there, we have another email prompted from a fictional supervisor that says, hey, I'd like to understand why you decided to make that decision. And then what the student's able to do is have full text capabilities to write out not just the substance, like why they think something should be done and is it effective, but secondly, you can look at things like email etiquette as well. Are they responding to, say, a client or an internal stakeholder in different ways? So a newer feature that we're really excited to test out this year. But all in all, a student will go through this self-directed, individualized, web-based experience over that 15 to 30-minute period. And then after they've responded to all of the different emails that you've set up for them, they're going to be prompted to exit the experience. It'll say you've completed the CapsimInbox simulation. And from there, we have a automatically generated and individualized report that's provided. And this is nothing that you have to create. You're able to just simply assign different scoring metrics to your different responses. And all of this is done instantaneously in the background. So anything you create is going to instantly provide feedback to students upon completion. Now, how does it work? Well, based on the way you have scoring of your different responses in the simulation, we're going to be able to assess an individual's performance by percentile. So showing where do they place themselves against the general populace or anybody else that's gone through your simulation. From there, we're able to provide a developmental index that'll speak to, did they pick the most proficient, the most effective response to your email, and how consistent were they throughout the exercise? And then one part we haven't mentioned just yet, but there is a self-assessment component to these simulations. Part of the very quick onboarding process that people will go through during your simulation, we're going to ask students the question, relative to your peers, where do you place yourself on a percentile on, say, a skill like leadership or problem solving? Well, maybe I think I'm about average. I'll put myself in the 50th percentile. And what's nice about this is we get self-reported information on the students' perceived skill values. They then go through your inbox assessment, and then we're able to compare those two. And the first thing we're able to share with them is in the bottom left of the screen, you'll see a self-awareness level gauge on a scale of 0 to 6. So what this will allow them to see is that if they have a higher score, it indicates that their perceived skills that they reported on are closer to reality, where lower scores can indicate that perhaps there's some over or underestimating of their capabilities going on there. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, is we want to be able to identify skill gaps. So what we're able to do here is visualize where do they self-assess and where do the inbox simulation place them at. That way we can not only identify which areas are their key strengths, but which areas are in most need for improvement. And again, all of this is auto-generated and nothing you have to create on your own, automatically output of anybody that goes through your simulation. And should you like to work with Capsim after the simulation, there's also a chance for you to add a developmental context to it as well, where you can have the ability for them to be provided with developmental tactics, as well as give them the opportunity to create an individual development plan. That way they can improve their skills going forward. But you're probably wondering, okay, students go through my simulation. What do the results look like to me? Well, I can actually show that with our administrative dashboard. So what you're seeing here is exactly what you would see upon logging on as a professor. And what you're going to be able to see is the overall scores by percentile for a given course or a given class, the average skill scores for each of the different skills or competencies that you're assessing, And then down at the bottom, of course, you'll have a course roster, which will show you individual results for students, everything from their overall score to self-awareness levels, to when did they complete your simulation and how long did it take them. So a quick 30,000 foot view of the CapsimInbox participant experience. But one thing we mentioned was that we wanted to make sure that the science of learning is incorporated into any simulation that one would like to create as a part of the GBSN competition. And really, our general philosophy at Capsim is that any of our solutions, any simulation that we create, has to have these kind of 4 key pillars to promote meaningful development in students. So what's nice about this is that should you decide to create a simulation, you're going to be able to assess your students' knowing and doing through the practical application of knowledge. You're also going to be fostering accurate self-awareness because we're going to give you objective, not just self-reported, information on their skills and competencies. Thirdly, you're going to be able to deliver an engaging and relevant experience, one that is very high fidelity, one that obviously has many components of experiential learning baked in, and is career related and can really simulate some of the situations that students will find themselves in as they enter the workforce. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, is that you're going to be able to provide that actionable feedback, some specific developmental guidance and ways that you can help students apply that knowledge as they move forward. So we've talked about what is CapsimInbox. We've talked about the science of learning. What exactly will you be using to create these micro simulations? Well, at this point, I'd like to introduce you all to the CapsimInbox authoring platform, a web-based platform that you'll be able to simply log on and immediately start building your simulations over the next month. Now, we're going to go through a walkthrough of this via Kelsey in just a second here. But really what we wanted to do is make sure that this authoring platform was as intuitive and user-friendly as possible. Really, we wanted to make it just as approachable as the participant experience for students. And what's nice about this is that it's a simple input, automatically saves. You put your content in there. You could test it at any time, like a PowerPoint deck. So really very low on the administrative involvement outside the actual creation of the emails themselves. Again, any simulation created is going to give you access to that cohort and individual level data. There's actually absolutely no development or access cost for you to utilize this as part of the competition. And everything is fully customizable, from the skills that we're assessing to the fictional characters you're interacting with, all the way down to the different reporting metrics and response options that you can create. But at this time, without further ado, I'd be happy to pass it on to Kelsey Zimermann, who will take us through a quick walkthrough of the Inbox authoring platform, talk a little bit about what content you'll be looking to create over the next month, and then a little bit of specifics around how judging works and the competition itself goes. Kelsey?
Great. Thanks, Matt. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to show you some more about this platform. It's super interesting. I can't wait for you guys to all get in and start working in it. So I'm just going to run you through the dashboard itself in a very linear type way, so you can kind of get a look at all the components that go into creating that immersive experience that Matt was speaking to. So once you enter a project, create a new project, you'll be sent directly to this first skills page. So this is the meat and potatoes. What are you testing for? What are you assessing? What do you want to really be looking for in the participant experience? So when you're creating skills, there's a couple ways that people will do it. They'll either have a storyline in mind, create that story, and then go back and pull out the skills that they're seeing people exhibiting to solve that story, or they're working the opposite rate. So you have an idea of what skills you want to assess, and then you have to create the storyline from there. So I'm going to work on the assumption that we know what skills we want, and then we have to create the storyline, right? So putting in the skills first, you have the option to really describe and give a good overview of what this skill means to the participant in general, or specifically to this, this experience, specific to this story. So you fill in the skills, you kind of describe them a little bit. This one's organizing, which is just planning and prioritizing work. And then as Matt mentioned, on the back end, there's the capability to add some developmental tactics after the simulation. The participant will get this information shared with them in order to really grow in that particular skill. In this case, tactics include, prioritization and setting boundaries, and that you can also share resources. So if there's some really good books you want them to read on that topic, or chapters from a textbook, or maybe an interesting video that is helpful for them to learn about that particular skill. Most of our simulations that are the length that you all will be working around, I would say 3 to 4 skills are usually normal, but we've had people do more or less. I would say 4 skills are pretty much the norm. Moving on to the scenario. So this is just really helping create that immersive experience that Matt was speaking to, really getting people ready to start the inbox, ready to put themselves in that role. So during the onboarding experience, when the participant starts the simulation, they'll be presented with this information. So they'll be presented with the role introduction and the opening scene. So role introduction is just what it sounds like. You're telling them what role they have within the company, maybe their tenure within the company, anything about direct reports or who they report to, anything that will give them a really good idea of context. Where am I within the world of, in this case, Sasquatch apparels? Where do I stand in the company, and what kind of decisions am I in charge of making? Basically, that's what you're setting them up to understand. As far as the opening scene, what are they walking into? You can say it's a normal day. You can say you can give them a full background. This has just happened. There's been a crisis and you have to manage it. Or there's been some recent turnover in staff and you're coming in after a big shakeup. Anything like that is a great place to lay out that opening scene, that opening field for the participants, so they have a good idea of what they're walking into. In this case, this person is returning from a long holiday weekend, so their inbox is going to be very busy. We also have the capability of this business card capability. So when they log in, it'll look like a business card that'll say their name. It'll feed in their name, Kelsey Zimermann, Director of Sales and Operations, Sasquatch Apparel. So this is optional to include that part, but there's also an introductory material PDF that you can add as well. There's a lot more background information you want to share before they start, you can attach that as well. So moving on, you can create characters now, or you can do it while you're creating your emails. So I'm going to jump right to the email portion, and then I'll show you the characters a bit after. So this is really the meat and potatoes of your inbox. So you like to say you can write an email, you can write an inbox. That's what this is going to feel like when you're creating emails. So you simply add emails or instant messages, and you write the content. So in this case, this is a senior sales manager. I chose from a drop-down list of characters I created, or you can add as you go. And in this case, this person is frustrated because they found out there's differences in their scheduling with a colleague, and it's kind of an HR issue is basically what we're seeing. And you can see here I've entered in those multiple responses that Matt mentioned. And also on this right dashboard here, you'll be able to see that I changed my scoring based on response, but there's a good, better, best, right? So the scoring for communication on this first response is just 1 positive point for communication. It's all right, but it's not my favorite. The second one, I clearly do not like at all. I think it's the wrong call. Basically, the response says this person is pushing the work onto someone else is what this response is. So I'm saying not only is this a negative point for communication, but also for problem solving. And then I really like this response. As the author, I think that they're really showing initiative, problem solving, communication, etc. So that's kind of how the scoring works. You're assessing based on the skills you set up in the this skill section. You can add a skill from the drop down and assign points to it. Another important part of this dashboard is the triggering function down here at the bottom. So this is what really creates that choose your own adventure experience that Matt mentioned. So based on the response options, they have different emails that come next. So if they make a decision that I don't really like, they're going to get, you can see this email is called complaint. So they're going to get a complaint next about how they handled that issue. And it's going to come in 7 seconds. So we want to make sure it's coming a little delayed, not immediately. Usually people take time to think about what they want to complain about. So that's how the triggering works. I'm going to show you a couple different examples of some tools within here. So this is really the basic dashboard for creating an email. You can see here as well, I have tags on these so that I can tell which skill is being assessed in which email. You can see one says communication skills, problem solving, everything like that. So I can actually filter by my tags, and I can tell what I'm assessing for, which skill. So I would add that tag down here. Add that tag down here to each email. I'm going to give you a quick look at instant messages. Very similar setup. If you can write a text, you can usually write an instant message. Those can come up in the same triggering functionality, so someone can make a decision and then you'll get a customer angry email or instant message immediately. These tend to be a little bit shorter in content because most people don't write huge novels when they're instant messaging people. So that's just something to keep in mind as far as best practices. I'm going to show you really quick. I'm going to skip ahead to a version that has an attachment. So you can add attachments within the email. You can see it here. So this is just kind of a big graph for someone to make a decision on apparel profits. So you can attach multiple different file types here for people to reference PDFs, images, videos, what have you. And then another place to add attachments is in this drive that Matt mentioned. You can add tons of different types of files in here. In this case, I just added a very simple organizational chart to give the participant more understanding of where they sit within the company, who reports to them, who reports to someone else, and things like that. So the inbox experience, we'll talk a little bit more about scope and how many emails is normal in a few, but I'm going to jump really quick back to the characters. So if you want to add a character as you go, or before you start, you would just click add character and you could create their name, the title, and then assign the color. Will just help you kind of gauge who's where and help you sort later. Last thing I'll show you really quick within the platform is a scoring report. So this is really helpful to make sure you're aware of how your version is being weighted. So let's say you have a version that assesses for these 4 skills, and you want to make sure they're pretty evenly weighted. The participant is experiencing emails that test for all 4 of these in a very regular way. It's not too heavy on one over the other. So you can see here, it's a little heavy on communication, but that's really up to you. It doesn't have to be evenly weighted. If you have a version where you're like, I think it's really important that someone is tested strongly on communication in this version, that's fine. This is just a great place to get a really good overview of what's happening as far as scoring goes, and make sure you're assessing the skills at the level you want them to be assessed at. So that was my super quick overview. As Matt mentioned, we're here for you guys during your creation process. We are here through that. I'm happy to meet with anyone to go over these best practices and more, and also help you, envision your exact storyline, help you figure out how to get that in there. So jumping back to the content. So I just went over it really quick in the back end of the platform, but quickly, this scenario encompasses the company, the industry, and the participant role. So in that case, it was an outdoor apparel company, and they were director of sales and operations. Skills assessed, as Matt mentioned, you can assess both soft and hard skills, or a combination of the two within a simulation. You see a lot of people use it for soft skills just because communication is so much a part of email skills. So that's something that usually comes up a lot, but we've had people use it for a lot of more technical information. And that usually it's just a great way to use the Drive if you want people to reference some more technical information. Email length, roughly 15 to 20 emails will give you a 15 to 30 minute long experience. Obviously that depends on how long your emails are or how much back work or referencing that the participant has to do to answer those emails. But yes, 15 to 20 emails, experience 15 to 30 minutes long is usually the ideal for. On the back end, after you've completed your simulation, it's optional for you to do these post-completion steps. So they include developmental tactics, which I kind of showed you briefly on the skills. And these are just tips and tricks to the participant on how to grow and improve on the skills assessed in the simulation. It can be tips and tricks. It can be actual resources, like I mentioned, textbook pages, articles, scientific journals, what have you. And then there's a debrief guide option too, that we have some skeleton versions of those we can share with everybody, but basically it just helps the participant really break down the emails. So it'll be a guide that really shows them, okay, this is the email that you encountered. This is what you should be thinking about as you're going through this email. This is the skill, and this is how you could answer this better in the future, or this is the components of the skill you should have been thinking about when you were answering this email. So those are just some examples of what is usually included in a participant debrief. And those are all in the handbook. A lot of that information has been included in Maddie's very thorough, awesome handbook. So, okay, participation. So the deadline is Wednesday, September 29th. So that's tomorrow at 11:59 Eastern. There's 4 themes, which I'm sure you've heard about a little bit. Those will be your focus. You have to pick one. It will include brief information on your simulation scenario. So location and industry, 1 or 2 sentences on the student's role, and what degree, courses, applications, wherever you feel it will be most relevant. Review the handbook. It's awesome. It's a great tool. Describe the 4 themes. It describes the 4 themes that can be found, can be the focus of your simulation. And we will provide access to the platform by this Friday, October 1st, for anyone that is ready to join. Due date. The simulation is due on October 29th at 11:59 Eastern. Again, we will be here. If you need us, just reach out, schedule a meeting with us. We can discuss concept, technical assistance, storyline, skills, whatever you need help with, we're here for. So judging. So judges will have between the 1st and the 5th to complete judging of November. Winners will be announced on November 17th and will receive a $5,000 prize to be divided among all members. Judging, so we'll hear from them in a few, but our judges are the first place team from last year, ethics and international mining authors, who are all here, we'll speak to briefly, and Matt and myself will also be judging. The criteria we're judging on is relevance. So you stated, you select a topic. How relevant is your version to that topic? Did you stay the course, basically? Practicality. It's an immersive experience. How real is the version you made? Are you sticking to that high fidelity experience? Clarity. Was it clear and concise? Was the time used correctly? The participant, there wasn't a lot of off in there. Everything's very clear. Versatility. Does the version have a broad use in academia globally? Can it be used in multiple different ways? And was it fun? Ultimately, it should be fun and creative to experience. It should be engaging, and people should want to go through it. They should be excited about it.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Kelsey, for that walkthrough of both the CapsimInbox authoring platform, as well as providing some key context on how to participate, as well as how the judging process will work. And now for this final portion of today's presentation, I'd love to open it up to an open discussion with the very authors that Kelsey had mentioned, our 2020 GVSN Faculty Simulation Lab authors. So for some formal introductions, we have members from two of the teams from last year. The first team is the three co-authors of the first place winner Ethics in International Mining Simulation. This includes Dr. Takako Mino, Lecturer of Humanities and Social Sciences at Asahi University, Uganda. This also includes Jewel Thompson, Adjunct Lecturer of Business Administration at Asahi University here in the United States, and Jennifer Seeley, Associate Professor of Politics at Earlham College here in the US as well. And as an additional fourth member today, I'm very happy to include the author of our Mercutrade Cobalt simulation, Dorothy Baumann-Pauly. She's the director of the Center for Business and Human Rights at the Geneva School of Economics and Management in Switzerland. Well, how's everybody doing today? Doing this morning?
Doing well, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that Jewel and I both work at Ashesi University based in Ghana, but I'm working there remotely from Uganda. So that's a little note of clarification. It's a little confusing. Sorry.
Appreciate that, Takako. No worries there. Apologies on my end for that.
Okay.
So, but great to have all.
I have a qualification. So I have a double affiliation. I'm also with NYU Stern Center for Business and Human Rights.
Excellent. Well, thank you all for your time today. Great to have you all on the call. Of course, happy to just prompt a couple questions to kind of see what it was like to be a part of the competition last year, and then really kind of provide some tips and tricks to some of the teams that are looking at participating this year. Since we do have two teams, I figured I'd kind of go back and forth, maybe a member of the ethics team on one side, and then Dorothy to get your input as well. But starting off for the ethics team, the first question, why did you decide to participate in the Faculty Simulation Lab?
So this is Jewel here. Hello, everyone. So we actually decided to participate in this because we felt that it would be a really great opportunity for us to combine our two different departments. So it's more so interdisciplinary approach to how we teach and how we practicalize this teaching. And so with both Jennifer and Takako being from the humanities side and me coming from business, we wanted to know how do we combine this so that students and of course faculty could understand how we can work more together or produce more opportunities within our university to work together in more experiential type of courses that we may have. So that was initially our reasoning for doing this.
Excellent. Thank you, Jewel. And Dorothy, anything you'd like to add on why you decided to participate?
Yes, Jewel, you have such excellent reasons. For me, it was a bit more erratic. It was basically Dan who told me about the collaboration with Capsim and the microsimulations way before that competition even opened. And so as it then came to that moment, I actually had some anecdotes in my head that came out of my research on the cobalt supply chain in the DRC. And I did a field research trip to the DRC not too long before I started this microsimulation. And there were elements that I could never put into an academic journal contribution, never even put it into a case study because the company would never allow me to write about this. But in the format of a microsimulation, I could actually capture these anecdotes in a way that students could really learn from it. So these were emblematic situations that would not fit any other format, I'm afraid, than the micro simulation. So that made it really interesting for me to not lose these really exciting teaching moments and still package it in a way to make it accessible for the students.
Absolutely. Excellent. Well, that was a great first question there. The second question I'd like to pose to the group, back to the ethics team, kind of borrowing from what Dorothy was just mentioning. Was there a specific goal or need that you're looking to address specifically with the ethics in international mining simulation?
Well, I'll speak again really quickly, and I'll also pass it off to our team for the latter. But for us, the mission or the foundation of Ashesi University is focused on developing ethical, entrepreneurial leaders who essentially will be this next generation to transform Africa. So with that in mind, what better way to find a business problem that incorporates ethics or ethical decision-making, that again, from this interdisciplinary approach, we could figure out a way to hone in on this core function of our university, but then also use our various experiences to make it come to life. So essentially that was our goal, was to really be able to propagate saying, this is what our university represents. And this is why ethics is important, especially when doing work on the continent where we, in any capacity, can find corruption really rampant. So how do we bring that to life and then find ways in which you can problem solve around that?
Excellent. Anybody else from the ethics team want to contribute as well? Or
I would also like to add that another important aspect of this is just creating contextual case studies that our students can really relate to. I think that's one of our main challenges here in the African context, is that most of the case studies that are available in the business world are from outside of Africa and mostly from the West. So this was also our opportunity to create something that the students will be more likely to encounter in their workplace, and also tackle an issue that was that has been prevalent and really affecting environmental issues within Ghana. So this is another reason why we thought that this opportunity would be a great way to explore that together.
Excellent. Thank you, Takako. And back to you, Dorothy. Is there anything you'd like to add around the goal and need? I know you spoke a little to it already, but anything you'd like to add further there?
Yeah, for me, the perspective is reverse in that I teach students here in Switzerland, and in my field, business and human rights, often things happen in very far away places, and to make those places more real and fully immerse my students into situations that they may still be in charge of managing from Switzerland or from the US. For that, I felt the microsimulation is the right format, because it's such an immersive experience for the students and makes them realize that even if they're the manager of a commodity trading company in Switzerland, they might get very close to the complexities of managing a cobalt mine in the Congo during COVID-19, which my scenario is about. So bringing those two worlds closer to each other and make students fully experience how decisions they make here may affect people in faraway places, in production sites. For that, it was the right format, I felt.
Excellent. Well, actually, for this third question, Dorothy, I'll kind of let you lead with this one. Both the ethics team as well as Mercutrade Cobalt have seen extensive testing with students, not just as a part of the 2020 competition, but also to this date, post-competition. Dorothy, to you first, have you seen your simulation directly benefit students as well as you as a professor?
So I taught I used this microsimulation in a class in a master program specifically for commodity trading managers. And this is the group that can attest to how real this case is. And I think it was uncomfortably real for them. Like I describe a scenario, as I said, it's based on anecdotes and real facts without mentioning a company, that they're very familiar with the scenario, yet they would not so easily talk about it in class. But through this scenario, they've realized, well, actually, it's something we should talk about, because these are real human rights challenges that affect how successful we are as a business. And so that worked really well. So they really enjoyed that, and it opened up the class discussions following the microsimulation. And it was a more trusted conversation space afterwards. In my bachelor class, I also assigned the microsimulation. The students that completed it greatly enjoyed it, but many students didn't even try, I think. So this year I changed class modalities and I make it mandatory to at least experience it. I want real feedback from everyone. According to the feedback from the ones that have completed it, they greatly enjoyed it, but not everyone did it. So this time I really want to force them to go through it.
There we go. Well, thank you for that, Dorothy. And then there's now the same question posed to the ethics team. How has the simulation benefited your students or professors that have reviewed your simulation since the competition concluded?
Sure. So a lot of ours came from preliminary testing as far as feedback. And I think to Dorothy's point, it just led to a lot of learning for us and what we're trying to do in revising the current simulation, simply because you find that some students were kind of nervous to take it because of the fact that sometimes they couldn't definitely connect and say, okay, is this for my class while I'm learning here? Can I do this? But then, once some of them actually went through the process, it became fun. And so you saw the variances because, we are in undergraduate universities between first year students and then some who maybe were a little bit older taking it where they can now kind of compare or we could compare their experiences where I know we gave it to a lot of our first year students and it just came as a more practical, fun experience. And then for some of the older students that participated, they did see the actual direct value of learning from there beyond it just being like a fun alternative to learning. For us as faculty, what it has helped us as we've been doing this like in an ongoing capacity is just seeing how we actually measure our learning from this experiential capacity. I can even say for myself is how do we track this and measure and show that if we have these learning goals and assessments, we're actually facilitating that in a really good way and concrete way that's informational and then of course goes beyond the theoretical and we can apply something to Takako's point, like galamsey, which is such a big issue in Ghana when it comes to illegal mining, that we can bring that to life. And how can we get students to engage in that across all of our disciplines? So from that end, we've seen the fun, we've seen the fear of taking it. And then also we've learned, what we can do better to improve, and which we're currently working on as well.
Yeah, I would just add to that. I think having these micro simulations does provide an interesting opportunity to push students a little bit out of their comfort zone. So their comfort zone might be the classroom where it's kind of their friends. They're going to go to the dining hall afterwards. But the micro simulation is a very professional, situation, and you do need to make, sort of take decisive action, and students may shrink from that at first or feel like they don't have the tools. And so an important part of that is demonstrating to them that these are going to be the kinds of scenarios you may face, and that your input has value, but you have to kind of feel like you have the courage and the tools to do it. And I really like that aspect of it, even though students sometimes, as Joel said, shy away from it.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that input, Jennifer. And actually, to pose a question to the ethics team, I have two more questions I'd like to highlight. I'm sure a lot of the thought on a lot of people's minds are thinking about participating in the 2021 competition is how do you effectively coordinate? So I was just curious, especially with a team of say 2 or 3 individuals such as yourselves. Briefly, could you share how the 3 of you were able to coordinate in creating the ethics simulation last year?
Takako, do you want to share?
Okay, well, it was quite the feat that the 3 of us were able to coordinate, especially because eventually I was in Uganda, which was 3 hours ahead of Ghana, which was I think 7 hours ahead of where Jennifer is. So we had put together like 10 hours of time difference between ourselves that we had to coordinate between. But I think it was honestly the camaraderie of the team, that we all understand each other, and we all know that we have lots of different commitments, but at the same time we're all very passionate about making this work and figuring out a time to schedule to get together to work on it. So what we did is, I think we met probably every 2 or 3 weeks, and maybe just like meeting more as the deadline came closer. And we were first brainstorming like what would we like to do, what case study would we like to create, and then we went into looking at the Capsim, how it works, because we had to learn that as well. And then we started to work on a Google document together to organize our thoughts and kind of like draft our things before putting them on the Capsim platform, so that we could be a bit more organized, and then just keep on revising, getting feedback and revising. So yeah, I mean, it was a really amazing and fun experience because of everybody's different unique contributions to the team. And somehow, despite the challenges, despite internet outages, power outages, all kinds of different issues, illnesses, we still made it and made it work. So that's how we coordinated.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, Takako. And Dorothy, going to pose the same question to you in just a second, but for the final question, I did want to prompt it now because we'll do a quick lightning round. I'd love to get all 4 of your opinions on this. If you could provide everybody on the call today, everybody that views this, one piece of advice to provide these teams on how to be successful in this competition. Love to get your opinion on that here next in just a second. But the same question to you, Dorothy. How did your team coordinate with effectively creating the Mercury Trade Cobalt simulation?
Well, I envy the other team for having a team, because I didn't really have a team creating the scenario, because as I said, I started with sort of anecdotes that I wanted to package for teaching purposes. Yet once I had immersed myself for a week or 10 days in sort of my scenario creation, I did have great help of colleagues at NYU Stern who went through it and just told me, does this flow? Is there something missing? Before I even uploaded it to the system. So I had a Word document first with the sort of decision tree lined out, and my colleagues at NYU Stern commented on that. And now actually on the call, I have my colleague Sarah Kramer, who will give it a fresh look now again. She knows all about our Cobalt work. She knows about this microsimulation, and she will revise it one more time to also update it, because we would like to integrate new developments that now happen in the DRC. And she will give it a fresh look and revise it a bit more. And that's incredibly helpful, because at some point, I mean, after a week or so, I really felt, well, now I am certainly fully immersed in this scenario, but I need an outside person to look at it to see if it flows, if it's interesting, and yeah.
Excellent.
And that would also be my number one advice, like have tested with both people who know nothing about this, but also some of your colleagues who know a bit about it, and can you help to strengthen your points? So.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, Dorothy. And then actually to that same point, if at any point that you do want to share with any of your colleagues that what you're creating during the competition, we have a very simple hyperlink. You just send that right out. They can go through it as a student and give you instant feedback on your experience. But with that, posing the final question to the ethics team, I'd love to get each of your opinion on what you would think would be the best piece of advice to provide to those that are going to participate in this year's competition.
Sure, I can kick things off. I would say don't be afraid to explore a complex problem. So a lot of times that allows you to be a bit creative in what you're developing, so that if it is something that's a bit nuanced, you're now helping people to develop real skills of something that hasn't been solved, that doesn't have a solution. So with us talking about ethical decision making, especially with a hot topic like Galamsey here, then you find that for us, when we would meet, we're always coming up with what if, or what if we did this, or we added this, or we added this experience. It allowed us to get really creative to the point where we thought, oh, this is going to be too long to explore. But, you know, at least we weren't short of ideas of how we can approach this and how we can connect it back to true learning. So I would say don't be afraid to explore complex problems.
Yeah, if I could follow up on that, I would definitely recommend reaching out to Matt and getting any advice as you're going. That was really helpful. And I'm in danger here then of poking a little bit at something that was said earlier, but I feel like the user experience might be 15 or 20 emails, but we wrote a lot more than 15 or 20 emails because of the choose your own adventure nature of it. All students don't see every email that you compose, but if you have different paths that they would end up going down, you end up writing emails for all of those. So,
sure. Thank you, Jennifer.
Yes, I definitely second the talk to Matt advice, because that was really, really helpful for us. Yeah, in addition to what everybody else said, I think that it's helpful to think about where do we want students to end up at the end of it. So how we thought about it, and everybody kind of talked about it a little bit, is that we thought about, okay, what would be like a high performing student, mid-range, and then low, and kind of have different things that each path would go through, so that way it brings a lot more complexity out, and it also just changes the whole situation, and it changes the ending of the simulation. So I think that's another piece of advice that I would share. And then just have fun with it. I think we're silly sometimes and made like funny IM conversations that were meant to be distracting. So you can just put in some creative things in there to make the experience more fun for the students.
Excellent. That's a great point, Takako. Not just, making sure it's a sound assessment, but a fun and engaging one as well. Absolutely. Well, with that, I'd like to really thank all 4 of our authors that were on the call today, Takako, Jewel, Jennifer, and Dorothy, providing their best insight into what worked successfully for them, as well as sharing a couple best practices as well. And they're looking forward to seeing all of your simulations that you create over the next month too. So excited for that. Now, in closing, I did want to say that I really want to thank GBSN for providing us at Capsim the opportunity to partner to bring this sort of simulation platform to GBSN's network and to be able to create some really immersive experiences, just like ethics in international mining and mercury trade cobalt. And again, just to reiterate a couple key facts before I hand it back to Maddie, if you'd like to contact us to get free access to the authoring platform, we'll take care of that for you. We will be providing, alongside the recording of this session, the presentation deck we went through, along with all these hyperlinks. That way you have immediate access to both Kelsey as well as myself. You can schedule a faculty simulation lab chat by taking a direct look at our calendars and jumping on that way. And then additionally, I wanted to also provide 2 hyperlinks. That way you could register to create a student demo account. That way you could see the very simulations we've been focusing on today. So again, I'd like to thank all of the authors' time. I'd like to thank Dan Leclerc as well as Maddie's time for coordinating this event. And then also to all of you as well, considering joining. We look very excited to see what you create and looking forward to the end of the competition and to see who's the winner. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass it back to GBSN.
Thank you so much, Matt and Kelsey and everyone who has been on this call. Thank you, Team Ashesi and Doro. I just want to remind everyone, for those of you who have not registered, registration is due by tomorrow at 11:59 p.m. Eastern time. If you have any questions, feel free to email either the Beyond email or my own email. That registration link is just the conference link /registration. If you have any troubles with that, let me know. As Matt said, we will be providing the recording and the presentation in due time, as soon as it processes. As we all know, that does take a little bit of time, but thank you all so much for being here, and we look forward to seeing all of the creations you develop. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.
See you later, everyone.